Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into the gap year. So my guest today is Holly Bull. She's the president of the Center for Interim Programs, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. So usually I start my guests where they went to college. So where'd you go to school?
I went to the University of Virginia. Charlottesville, Virginia. Yeah.
Fantastic. So let's just go back in time.
Okay.
And what was the process for you to pick that school?
Well, as it turns out, my father, who started the company that I run now, was a teacher and a headmaster for years. He'd gone to UVA, so we went down to visit it. But before I actually did that, I had taken my own gap year. So I had time to just explore some areas of interest and get a feel for what I wanted to pursue, and then thought that would be a good match. And I only applied to 3 colleges,
Wow.
compared to the 16, 20, 42
Sure.
that people apply to now.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was a fairly easy process for me.
So now, so you graduate from University of Virginia, and how do you go from University of Virginia to president of?
To gap year planning?
Yeah.
Well, again, for me, it was something that was just kind of offered, because my father was doing this work. But actually, oddly enough, in my senior year, I was an anthropology major, and one of my teachers said, "You probably should create a resume and cover letter, you all," because we didn't have a lot of career planning. And so I just tossed off a letter to my father, thinking, I'll use him as an example.
Yeah.
"Dear Mr. Bull, I'm interested in a job with your company," and he took me seriously.
Oh my God!
And that was my job. So I don't think I had a typical process getting into work. However, I took a gap year before college. I took a gap year after my sophomore year.
Okay.
And what my gap year actually helped me do is figure out what I didn't want to do, and I think that's really helpful in terms of the gap year process.
Great.
Like, who are you? What are you interested in? What's the field like? And then having that clarity before you go to college is really helpful.
So now, how many years have you been doing
Gap year counseling?
Gap
25.
25 years?
Yeah, and I just do gap year counseling. I don't do any other kind of counseling.
Great. Now, what's the process? How does it all work? The students just come to you? How does it all work?
Well, we started in 1980 when nobody was talking gap year in the U.S., so we were definitely pioneers in the field. My father was a real pioneer in the field. And over the years, we've just worked with so many families. A lot of it is word of mouth. We've spoken on many sort of television shows and at schools, and I speak at a lot of the gap year fairs that now take place, and articles that come out. So I wouldn't call it mainstream. Excuse me. I wouldn't call it mainstream in the U.S. now, but the concept has really gone from sort of 0 to, I would say, 50 or 60
Wow.
or more now. And with Malia Obama taking a gap year last year, that was huge press for the gap year field.
Yeah.
And a lot of people more aware of it because of that.
Okay, so
we work with students across the U.S. and abroad.
So what happens? A student comes to you and says, "I'm a senior in high school. I want to take a year off."
Yeah, or younger, or the parents want their child to consider it. I mean, to my mind, it just should be part of what's offered to students, so that they have a sense of choice. I mean, one thing that I think is a real missing with the whole, K through 12 process is that you are in this track.
Yeah.
And then the process is actually K through 12 right into college, typically, for a lot of people, and that mindset. And there's no sense of, hey, I choose going to college. They feel like they have to go to college.
Right.
And even if they want to, there's not a lot of choosing in that whole process. The gap year, ideally, is something that a student is offered and then chooses to do. And then within that year, they're picking and choosing things that they want to get at. So they own the process in a completely different way. And to my mind, if you can learn at 17, 18, 19 how to choose and create your life,
Right.
and know what that feels like, you're taking all that proactive energy into college and beyond. That's personal power. I mean, that's going to stay with you no matter what. And it's a lot of the success of gap year students in college.
So what does a student need to know when they go into the gap year? Do they have to know, I want to be a volunteer? Do they have to know anything?
No, they really don't. And I've had some parents drag their children into my office sort of kicking and screaming. And I always tell them, look, this only works if you want to do this. So here's how this works. Here's what this is about. Once they realize what they can do and that it's really just about circling areas of interest and then seeing how those interests match with concrete options. For a lot of them, it's like, wow, I had no idea I could do this. So if someone, say you were to come into my office, you were 17, 18, finishing high school, and said, Holly, I'm really interested in sports. I've been playing baseball. Maybe I'd like to coach or play some more. And then I'm also interested in business and you have a range of other interests. And I start to just pepper you with ideas. So I might say, okay, you could go to South Africa and coach kids in sports there in the townships, or you might go to Australia and do some coaching or playing in these different areas of interest. And then you might tie in a business internship, for 2 or 3 months in New Zealand or Spain or Ireland. And that allows you to get like a half step into the working world, at 18, 19.
Yeah.
To get a feel for this is what it's like to work, to cook for myself, to head out the door every day to a job like placement, to navigate a city independently.
So now do you
with
have
the structure in place?
So now do you have to be a senior, or can you be any year?
You could be older, yeah. I mean, we work with all ages. So typically it's the students between high school and college who can most easily take the time. It's like a natural break. So that's the first wave coming through. Then there's a smaller wave called the stepaways. That's what I call them. So these are people who've gone to college for a year or 2 years, and they're saying, what am I doing here? I don't know what I want to major in, or this is more of the same. I'm just sitting in a classroom, not very interesting. Or maybe they have to leave, and so they're also taking some time to explore. It could be a semester, could be a full year. It should be called gap time because it's not always, it doesn't have to be a year.
Yeah.
And I was just mentioning to you that we work with all ages, so we have just a whole slew of people now from a New York Times article who are older who want to take gap time.
Really?
And so this could be anywhere from people from their 40s on up through somebody who was 78.
So are these people that have gone to college and now want to go back or something?
These are people, well, a lot of these could be mid-career, or these could be people who are retired and want to take some gap time.
Wow.
It's like, okay, what have I not done in my life? What do I want to get at? Or I don't want to just stop working. I want to get at something substantive and interesting. How do I go about doing that?
Yeah, so the mindset for somebody should be what they're looking for in life. Is that correct?
I think the starting point is, who am I? What am I interested in? And a lot of students don't get asked that question. It's a lot of I have to, I ought to, I should. These are the requirements.
Yeah.
And instead of saying to them, whoa, back up here and start looking at what you're drawn to. And that process, and it can lead you to really interesting things. I mean, years ago we worked with a young woman who had a lot of years of French, and her father wanted to go do something with the French, and Carol wanted to go to Nepal. And he was going crazy. It's like, what are you going to do with Nepali? Nobody speaks Nepali except the Nepali. How is this practical? She said, I'm really drawn to Asia. Now, it's not that an exotic life is a better life, but her life is really interesting. It all came through that draw to Nepal. She's fluent in Nepali, she's fluent in Tibetan, she started cottage industries, she's raised her children there, she's married to a photographer, they travel across Mongolia.
Wow.
I mean, her whole creation came out of this draw, the hands-on experience in Nepal during her gap year, and then where that took her from there.
Now, do you ever see a gap year in high school?
It's harder when the students are younger.
Okay.
So once you get below 18, then you can take gap time, 17, 16. You have to find programs that will take you at that age. So it's going to be more structured group programs.
Gotcha.
Which brings me to programs. So in terms of what's out there, when I say gap year program, it can mean a group program specifically set up for gap year students, lots of structure and support. Could be 3 months to 9 months, cultural immersion, service work, adventure travel, sightseeing all together, with 10 or 12 students.
Yeah.
It could be moving around Europe studying art history and Western civilization. It could be doing like an outdoor type program, like an Outward Bound type experience. So those have lots of structure and support. Then you have skill-based intensives, which are things like, hey, let me go get my training to teach scuba or snowboarding or skiing, or I want to get my wilderness EMT certification. So these are short intensives where you're getting that training, and sometimes they're coming away with certifications. And you're paying for those. Those are group programs still, but all different ages.
Gotcha.
Then you have these internships, 2 to 3 months, urban internships, very specific kind of program that an 18-year-old can do in a number of locations that will give you that half step of the working world post-college.
Yeah.
And then you have volunteer, all kinds of volunteer options. So volunteer the cheapest, they might give you housing and food in exchange for labor, all the way up to group programs with fees and tuitions. Now, one thing that I did during my gap year, which was really key, the first gap year I took, was going off to Hawaii for 4 months and helping with aquaculture research. So I thought I wanted to be a marine biologist. I didn't have a clue. And, it took, I don't know, a month or so of just scrubbing out the shrimp tanks and chatting with the scientists before I thought, I don't have the patience for this kind of research. This is not something I want to do in college or work in the world beyond.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was ticking things off rather than finding the aha. I ended up majoring in anthropology, which suits exactly what I'm doing now because I'm just interested in what humans are up to.
Yeah.
And then providing these opportunities.
So now, do you get any drawback from high school counselors or anything like that, or the high schools in general?
Much more rarely now. I think earlier on, people were much more white-knuckled about what is this? It's going to derail kids from wanting to go on to college, which is not true. And that's one of the fears still. If you take a gap year, you're not going to want to go on to college. The reality is these students are far more fired up about their learning, and they have a reality check of the world. It's like, okay, here's why I might really appreciate having a college education.
Yeah.
People maybe who didn't have a chance to have one. And then just that clarity. And they're rested. I don't know what you see with students, but I'm seeing fried 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
Just tired.
Yeah.
And anxiety. I was just looking at this National Institute of Mental Health, that anxiety is the most common mental health disorder now. It's like a third of adolescents and adults are saying they have this.
Yeah.
And I think with the students, it's so extreme. They're just constantly stressed.
Yeah.
And a summer isn't enough to fill back up before you go on to college, I don't think.
So is the focus on trying to get these students to just think of life in general, of what they're looking for? Because you can't be a student that just says, I want a gap year because I just don't want to do anything.
Right.
Right.
Now, we're pretty, the way that we've always run Interim, it's very practically focused. What are your interests? Let's match the interests with these concrete learning experiences. We're not travel agents.
Right.
We're not interested in that. We're interested in dropping you into community so you're getting involved in something.
Yeah.
I don't have an agenda as to what people should do. If you came into my office, I'm chatting with you, I'm just saying, hey, here's what's out there for you to consider.
Right.
And then you're going to know which ones you're drawn to or not. And
So you just give them packages of what is out there.
I just begin to describe things. And in that process, students really usually know what they want to do because they're doing this.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, this sounds really interesting. No, I like that one better than that.
Yeah.
Even that process of engaging and choosing is really helpful because you don't really choose college in a sense.
Now, do you get students that sometimes they've applied at schools?
Yep.
And they get, instead of rejection letters, they get, we want you in January of the following year, or the following year sometime. Right? So do you get those kids and then they say, I'd rather just take a gap year and go to school in September when everybody starts instead of starting in January?
Yeah, and it depends on the student. Middlebury, as you know, has the Feb admits for years. And actually what's interesting about those students, when students are offered that, some will take that semester and go do a gap semester and then start in January. Some, when they realize what they can do during gap time and all these interests they have, may opt for a whole year. You're looking at probably about 8 to 9 months of gap time.
Wow.
Because typically it's summer, you're doing your own thing, fall, you're on a program, home for a break in between, where you might reapply to colleges even at that point.
Yeah.
And then you have about 5 months, January through May, where you can weave together more combinations. So you could do 3, 4, 5 different programs during a year.
Wow.
In different areas of interest, sort of like a smorgasbord.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of it is just like lighting matches on things. You're not tending fires. You're just checking things out. And some you'll blow out. Marine biology for me, blow that one out. Ooh, modern Greek. I got so excited about speaking Greek because I learned the Greek in the culture in the spring of my gap year. UVA didn't offer modern Greek.
Yeah.
If I could have taken it, I would have like a shot. I still love speaking modern Greek today.
Wow.
And I don't speak it very well.
So now you brought some slides. So what are the slides about?
So I was talking about Middlebury College there, and it got me thinking about the concerns that people have. If you take a gap year, what's it going to be like to step away from academics for a year? How will I be as a student going into college? And what they've started to do is track the GPAs of gap year students. So this is Bob Claggett, who was in Harvard admissions for years, and then he was Dean of Admission at Middlebury College for about 7 years. And I've been on lots of gap year panels with Bob for NACAC conferences and so forth. When Bob got to Middlebury, the first thing he noticed is that the Feb admits, the people who just had that summer and fall
Yeah.
before college, he said a disproportionate number of them were walking away with all the leadership awards. It's like, what's happening with that time? And then he started to track the GPAs of the gap year students. And what he saw in this slide is that the dark blue, this is for Middlebury, the blue are the GPAs of the gap year students are higher than their peers, pretty much across the board. And he was accounting for their academic standing coming in. So these are students who are outperforming how they're expected to do based on their academic history, and they're outperforming their peers. And then the next slide is UNC Chapel Hill. So he ran the numbers for UNC Chapel Hill. Same results, even more dramatic. The light blue are the GPAs of the gap year students compared to the dark blue. And these are students who are all different kinds of students. These are high-powered academic students. These are students who are decent students, just not sure what they want to get at, to students who have learning differences. It runs the gamut. And yet, pretty much across the board, these students are outperforming their peers. And they're often not doing anything academic for a whole year.
Yeah.
So, like, again, what's happening? They're rested, they're more focused, they're excited about their learning for its own sake. They have a sense of, I mean, one of the big things that was missing for me in high school, and I went to Princeton High School in my last 2 years, how does math class, history, Spanish, this fragmented curriculum, how does it connect within itself, but how does it relate to the world around me?
Yeah.
You know, what am I doing this for? Just to get a grade and pass a test? That's not very exciting. But boy, if you can connect the learning, it's like, wow, modern Greek, I'm learning modern Greek, and I walk out the door, I'm chatting with people in Greek.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Now, when you were at college and you met friends that they just went from high school to college, did you see any differences between those people and yourself that had a gap year?
Yeah, I think first year, if you've done a gap year and land as a freshman, you're definitely more mature. Now, I've never had anybody say, Holly, I wish I hadn't done a gap year because I felt too old as a freshman, because I think students are more worried about that. I don't want to get behind my high school class. I don't want to be too old as a freshman. You're not so age-bound in college, and you have such an advantage. I mean, I did not feel like I was run by the mob the way that I saw a lot of my peers seem to be.
So
wanting to fit in.
Yeah.
They didn't take advantage of what college had to offer as quickly as I did. I mean, I just joined clubs. I moved on things. And what I saw is that they were sort of clumped together, trying to fit in, and it took about a semester, almost a year, before they really stepped into that experience.
Yeah.
And here's some more data. I've got another slide here. This is Mark Hatch at Colorado College. He's Dean of Admissions there. And I was on a panel with him, and what he said is, what you see with these gap year students is that they're leaders on campus. They don't have the behavioral issues and dramas that a lot of their peers have, roommate issues. It doesn't faze them.
Yeah.
They've actually finished college more quickly than their peers, so they're more efficient students. They're not changing majors, changing schools, trying to figure out where their passions are through more classes. He also said, this was interesting, he said, gap year males outperform non-gap year female peers, which is statistically really significant.
Well, yeah.
So something's happening with these young men who take gap time that make them much better students, just on a GPA level. That's what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you go to school and you go to your classes, you feel more mature.
Yep.
And you're joining a lot more activities at the school as well. I
think people aren't intimidated because through the gap year itself, they've learned how to initiate their lives. I mean, here's an example. I worked with a young woman who took a gap year. She went to college. She was in her first year, and a friend of hers and she were planning this spring break trip to South America. And their friends were looking at them saying, you can do this? They didn't think anything of it because they'd already initiated a lot of their travels because both of them had taken gap time.
Right.
And so that's where the mindset was, is yeah, I can create this for myself. I'm fine. I can take on the world.
So now a lot of something comes up where students that take gap years, is it harder for them to get into those cliques? Because now a year's gone by, usually colleges have those friends that they've all created that first year.
Well, they're coming in as regular freshmen, so they're creating their own class. So it's I don't think anything's established yet, and I think they're. I mean, I joined a karate club. I met people through different interests I had that I followed up on, and that is naturally where your kindred spirits come from.
Gotcha.
You know, an outdoor club or whatever.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if there's a bit of a disjoint for students, it can be that, yes, they may look at some of their freshman peers and wonder where their heads are.
Yeah.
Because people are really young. Now, if you're a female landing as a freshman on campus, to my mind, you really want to not be run by the mob. You really want to know where your boundaries are. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
My stepdaughter took a gap year. No problems on her gap year. Independent placements in Italy, yoga program, internship in Dublin, Ireland. Never had any issues. She goes to Georgetown. She goes to a rugby party in her freshman year, in the fall of her freshman year, and promptly gets roofied. Nothing happened, thank God. Mm-hmm. But she was able to take care of herself, even though she was gone.
Yeah.
She told her friend who was with her, she said, "Get me out of here, and don't let any guy touch me. Don't let any guy near me." And she got herself out of there. She doesn't remember any of that. But there's, and I don't mean to scare people off of college, but there's a lot of crazy stuff going on.
Sure.
In freshman year especially.
Sure.
So the more formed you are, the clearer you are about boundaries, the clearer you are about what you want to get at or not, the better.
So when colleges give you the spring breaks and things like that, I guess that's just a break for the kids as well.
Yeah.
Right? So you're still doing the same stuff that everybody else is doing.
Yeah, you're pretty much, I mean, when you're on a gap year, you're following an academic calendar. And you can orchestrate it so that you're home when your friends are home from college, so that you can compare notes and they'll be drooling over what you're doing.
Yeah.
Once the glow of college wears off,
Yeah.
what you're up to might sound pretty interesting.
So now there are those parents that send their kids off to different parts of the world. What happens with the kids that don't have the money to go to different parts of the world and they want to stay closer?
That's a great question. Yeah, because a lot of times people are thinking the gap year has to cost a lot, and it doesn't. I mean, you could stay in the States and do, for example, a program where you're working with middle school students in the outdoors, like a mountain campus. And this is a placement that will give you housing, food, and a stipend. They'll train you. It's like being a camp counselor, but during the year.
Yeah.
So you could do that in the fall and actually save some money, as one of my students did, and learn how to work with children. You got to like kids.
Yeah.
And the outdoors. And then you could look at something that might involve like working at an elephant sanctuary, low cost, or a big cat sanctuary, where they give you housing but not food, so you have to cover your food.
Yeah.
But you're not spending much. If you can get yourself somewhere and they're covering your housing and maybe your food, that's a pretty low cost year.
And what are some of the volunteer programs that are out there?
I just had a young man come back, and he was actually a step away, so he wasn't sure about taking this fall semester, but he's so glad he did, because he just got back from doing an internship or a volunteer placement in New Orleans, helping to rebuild the city. So that was a volunteer group house. They fed him. They provided transportation out to the work site. Wow. He met all kinds of people from all over. Now he's about to go off and get his certification to teach snowboarding, and then he'll head back to Susquehanna in the spring.
And the experience that he has as well.
Right. And he's grown up a lot. I mean, if you think about it, you go from high school to college. College isn't that different from high school. You're still going from class to class. You're still with a bunch of your peers. Mm-hmm. You haven't done this.
Right.
And the gap year does this.
Right.
And then you bring all of that life experience, into the classroom and beyond.
So you can place them almost anywhere in the world if they wanted to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
There's so much out there. People don't realize the wealth of options that you can go and get at, and that it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Yeah. And you could do one thing that's a splurge, as I did. Greece was an academic program. My parents paid for that. Hawaii was volunteer, and I helped pay for all the airfare during my year. So you can work in the summers or in between programs as well. And you should, to my mind. It's like your year, pay for your year. Financial responsibility is part of it as well.
Great. Well, we're coming to the end of our show. And usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the parents out there that their sons and daughters want to do a gap year?
I think the first thing is it's really wonderful to offer the option to a child, whether they want to do it or not. Just that this is part of what you could look at in this process, is part of your education. That would be my ideal. In terms of the actual concrete process, there are gap year fairs that they can go attend now. These happen in January and February, and they're across the U.S., usagapyearfairs.org. The American Gap Association is a nice contact. It's a resource, it's a website that's trying to vet programs for American students and provide a lot of information. Gap year counselors are really useful. We do a free brainstorming session for anyone who wants to come in, and I just lay out all this information, how it works, and then put up a scenario, so it can be helpful to work with a counselor. Books, there's a lot of information online now. Yeah.
And how can they get in touch with you?
We're right here in Princeton, New Jersey, and our website's the best. It's www.interimprograms.com.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much for coming
You're
on the show.
welcome. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no problem. So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.